Hi, everyone. Patrick Fingston from Illinoize.com. Pleased to be joined by Gary Rabine, the latest candidate for governor in the state of Illinois. It's Monday evening when we record this. On Tuesday morning, he formally announces his campaign for the Republican nomination for governor. He's a suburban businessman, lives in McHenry County, which you can kind of call a suburb, kind of not. It's kind of an exurb, kind of something like that. Gary, thanks so much for taking the time.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Patrick.
So let's ask this straight, bluntly to the point. We elected a rich guy with no government experience in 2014 and Bruce Rauner, and it didn't go very well. We elected a rich guy with no government experience in 2018 and JB Pritzker, and I think there are a lot of people, especially on your side, that would say it's not going very well. Why should we do it again?
Yeah, great question, Patrick. I think you can compare however you want my wealth to these other two guys you mentioned. I think it's totally different as far as, I'm not a billionaire. I'm not close to being a billionaire. That's great. I'm very blessed, by the way. I've been fortunate enough to build businesses here in Illinois that have created nice success for me for sure, and I've enjoyed it, right? But the difference is, in my opinion, is 20 years of my career has been in the labor force. So I paved driveways, parking lots, and concrete and asphalt, and drove truck. I had a CDL license all the way up until like 8 or 9 years ago, I guess. But for 20 years, I worked in the field doing concrete work, asphalt work. Just hard, fun, dirty jobs, and I love it. Right? I still love that type of work. And then I figured out at that point how to scale businesses, and I read up, and I had some good mentors that taught me how to scale business and be an entrepreneur, instead of being a small business person working in my business every day. So that experience is awesome when it comes to understanding, how people get through the day, how people pay their bills, how people afford to buy a house and pay their mortgage, because you're right there in the thick of it when you have a small business and initially a couple of teammates, and eventually at that point, 20 years in, maybe had 20 people on our team. But it was kind of a hockey stick effect. I pulled myself out of the businesses to understand entrepreneurship, and our businesses grew drastically over the next 10 years, up through 2010, 11. And we've continued to be strong since then, doing business all over the country, actually, which we didn't do the first 20 years, right? So for me, I guess my blessings have been I've found great mentors, and when it comes to strong economic minds and strong business minds to understand where are we going to do business? Should we go do business in California, Texas, wherever? And we've done that over the past 20 years. I guess it's been probably 15 years, 16 years, choosing the best states to do business in for our customers. So we do business for lots of facilities owners, large facilities owners now across the country. And with that, we work for them in the states where we think that they're not as tough on getting stuff done. If it takes 6 months to get a permit, we're probably not going to go there and do that work. We'll just let somebody else do it. If it takes 30 days for a permit, okay, that's reasonable, and we'll go after that job. So in building our business across the country, we're able to serve our customers everywhere. But we understand where it's tough to get things done. It's tough to hire people and have teammates, right? Some states make it really tough to do business. So with that, the lessons I've learned in the last 15, 16 years now has been awesome, because now I really could see why Illinois in the last 15 years has gone from being the best place in the middle of the greatest country in the world to today, the worst place to actually create jobs and hire people. And so I guess that's kind of where I'm at, right? I'm a little different than a billionaire that may be a trust fund billionaire, or somebody that earned it through private equities and growing and or let's say buying and selling businesses. A lot different situation, and I think my lessons are closer to the working man and woman in Illinois.
Why do you want to do this?
I want to do this because I love my state, and I feel like my state doesn't love me. I want to stay here. I don't want. We've got 11 companies in the Rabine group of companies that my son actually is the CEO of today. My daughter runs one of the companies, and we have great leaders that lead all these little businesses. But if we look at these businesses, Patrick, and you did the numbers, you'd say at least 6 of them, probably even 7 or 8 of those, should not be in Illinois anymore. And my accountant will tell me this. My leaders will tell me this. And it really bothers me a lot. And so I'm running because I want to change this environment. I want to be in a state that I'm proud to build business and build jobs in, instead of a state where everybody that knows me outside the state says, why are you still in Illinois? So, I mean, I'm really bothered, and I want to change that environment. And that's exclusively the reason. I want this to be a state where it was 15 years ago, where we were very competitive when it came to cost of regulation, taxation. We're just not today.
So how do you do that? I mean, I think that's a pretty simple question to a complicated answer, but it's not like you flip a switch and fix all the problems.
Yeah, you're right. So there's some stuff out there that I've been reading for the last, probably the last 7-8 years, when I've seen the decline in Illinois. That there, some great economists from across the country have written many things about Illinois and what we can do to fix it. Right. I'm not saying that I agree with many of them, but I think when you take pieces of all of them, there's solutions. So if you look at some of the best economic leaders in our country's history, there's not a lot. I mean, there's maybe a dozen people that I respect as some of the best minds in economics. Some of them worked for this last president. Some of them worked for Bill Clinton. Some of them worked for Reagan. And I actually have a couple of the best names in that group that want to work for me in Illinois to change the dynamics that we have today. The solutions aren't easy, Patrick. There's no doubt about it. But I think there's reasonable solutions out there that, if we actually would tell the truth to taxpayers of Illinois, tell the truth of exactly where we are really at when it comes to pension debt, where we really are at when it comes to the size of our government compared to the average state in the country, where we're really at when it comes to our tax burden for our property tax. For anybody who owns a house in Illinois, our taxes are like 180 to 200% higher on average than the average property tax in the country. So that's not fair. And so when we compare all these things, there's ways to fix them. You can't fix them all at once. I know it. You can't make it. This isn't a simple fix for sure. But the people in Springfield today, in my opinion, don't care about fixing anything. All they care about is just taxing more, and let the greedy people leave in their opinions, right? Unfortunately, we're losing just 50,000 jobs a year. The last thing I saw would be 50,000 jobs annually in 2020, but that's besides the COVID shutdowns and all that, and 100,000 people a year. Well, it's a lot worse than that, because we're losing the people that are probably the best investors in our state, people that are the best income producers in our state, and we're bringing in people that are coming in our state are people that need the state's money, right? So social services, unemployment, whatever. I'm confident we're losing some of the best assets to our state, and great people, great businesses, great job creators, and great hardworking people that aren't putting up with anymore the high taxes on property and everything else. So
you mentioned property taxes. Let me ask you about that, since obviously the property tax system is local. It's to your local school district, to your local municipality, to your local county. If the state were to come in and say, we are going to abate X 50% of your property taxes, you're going to have to come up with hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to fund more education, more city government, more park districts, et cetera, to be able to do that. And I don't have to tell you that money isn't growing on a tree tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, so you're exactly right. I mean, there's some models out there that it's been done. Indiana, had a tax freeze at 1%, lowered and froze at 1%. Even sloppy high tax California has property taxes today that are well over 100% higher than they were in 2007, in a place that just is taxing people out of California. But the real estate values, the nest eggs for all these people, is still growing, right? In Illinois, we're actually higher on our cumulative taxes now. Everything I'm reading says we're higher than California. Okay, and we have per capita we have more people leaving actually than California. But again, so when you look at this, there's a way, and whether it's the Indiana plan, the California plan, there's a way, but it doesn't come without some type of tightening of the belt. I mean, we look at, and you've probably seen the numbers, Patrick, but our currently our unfunded pension debt is way higher than everything I read before really digging into it. When I read about the unfunded pension last 4 or 5 years, I'm seeing 100 billion 120 billion. Now we're seeing 144, 100, 164 billion. They're only showing the Springfield, and they're showing Illinois as a state. They're not showing the city. They're not showing the counties. Together, all together, we're 420 billion right now is what I'm seeing cumulative, right? 420 billion. That's higher than any state in the country, higher than states that are 3, 4, 2.5, 3 times our size. So again, that's not sustainable, and that's a big problem. We have to figure out how to, what's the solution to that. But if you can figure out, if you can start with the issues of that first, and understand how we can protect these pensions for these people that have, that they've lived their lives planning on these pensions, right? Somehow protect them, because at the rate of cost Illinois taxpayers today, at 28% of all our income, and if we paid it like a mortgage, like you and I have to pay a mortgage, Patrick, it'd be 55% of our income goes to that one thing, the unfunded pension. So I mean, it's not sustainable, right? So how do we fix that so that these pensioners get a check for the rest of their lives, right? Maybe without people getting 2, 3, 4 checks, that might help, right? Maybe limiting that number somehow. I'm not sure, right? There's a solution out there, and I've read many of them. But boy, you have to start with the biggest issues, which that's probably the biggest in our state, right?
Well, the Constitution is pretty clear, though, that you can't diminish a worker's pension, a state worker's pension. So, do you support changing the Constitution? Do you support a new level, a new tier? When I worked for the state, I was one of the first tier 2 employees, that received less and paid more, and is there a tier 3? Is there a 401k style plan? But even if you do those with new hires, as people, work out of the system, you're still not shoring up those funds any better.
Patrick, you're right on. I mean, there's a lot of different things I see out there, but I mean, one of the best plans I saw was Ted Dabrowski of WirePoint had probably the best plan I've read, and I actually bounced it off a couple of my friends that are those worldly or national economic advisor friends of mine that are going to be on my team, and they've looked at many, and if you look at Ted Dabrowski's plan from I saw it maybe 6 months ago and bounced it off him and tried to had him explain it to me better, but a plan similar like that is probably one that will save our pension for the pensioners of the future, and also save Illinois, because it ends up taking our cost of the pension from 55% to what, and really that's kind of what it is today, because we say it's 28% going to the pension right now of the $42 billion budget, but it's really 55 because we're loading up on the long-term not unfunded pension by, it looks like somewhere around $10-12 billion a year still. So that 10-12 billion plus the principal we're not paying, if we were doing it the right way, it'd be 55% of our income, right? So again, if that doesn't stop, it doesn't survive. So we can call what we want, but I believe that there's something there where if we looked and said probably a tier 2, tier 3, like you just mentioned, probably a hefty 401k for everybody that comes into the system, and it's not an overnight thing. You're still going to have a lot of cost in pension for the next 25, 35 years. But eventually it gets down to a competitive number where maybe we're, 5 or 10% of our budget goes to the pension instead of today's crazy cost of it, right? And if you look at our competitive states across the country, Patrick, the average state's about 3% of the whole budget that goes towards that pension liability, right? Or retirement fund for their public workers. So when we're at 55% and the average state's at 3%, right now, that's where we're at. How do we compete? How do we not tax everybody out of the state, right? So that's a major issue, and I guess it's not something I'll always go into depth on, because we've got a lot of work to do in figuring this thing out. But at least I understand the numbers pretty well, and I'm going to continue to learn and understand them better as I go forward.
Pensions are obviously a long-term issue, and whoever runs for governor, whether it's on your side or whether it's the incumbent, those pensions won't be fixed tomorrow, and they're not going to stop pulling on the budget in FY 22, 23, 24, 25, which would be as part of the next term. And I think then we have to talk about how do we get through things in the short term. Obviously the FY 21 budget, which was $5 billion in the hole, and Democrats will even acknowledge that at this point, because they were expecting the governor's tax plan to pass, and they were expecting the federal bailout money last calendar year.
Yeah.
That is eventually going to show up now. But even if you look at COGFA numbers, what the governor is proposing is anywhere from $1.5 billion, $2 billion out of whack. His spending is 41.6, revenue is around 40-ish, and you've got some proposed loophole closures, as he calls it, that closes that gap. But there are more mouths to feed than money to feed them at this point. And I think that there's a lot of concern that when Republicans get up and say we need to cut the budget, when you say waste, fraud, and abuse, that means programs that hurt seniors and disadvantaged people and the mentally ill. How do you get through this? Because I don't think you can cut, $1, $3, $5 billion out of the budget.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm confident of this. When I talk to business leaders across the country, from very large ones, the Elon Musk type of the world or the country, and to people that have 100 or 300, 400 employees, they don't even consider Illinois anymore. And this is a big reason why. So if there was at least a plan, Patrick, just at least a plan that was put into place that looked good 20 years down the line.
I mean, Amazon's building facilities here. You've got the big data centers in DeKalb County. The New York Stock Exchange is considering coming here with their data center. I mean, there is still industry and there's still business here.
Absolutely. But the industries lack actual jobs. When you look at the biggest industries here, like you just mentioned, data centers, distribution centers, okay? Yeah, they got to be here. We're in the best location in the middle of the country, but there's very little jobs that go with those businesses. I mean, they're multi-billion-dollar businesses in one location when it's a big distribution center or a data center. But count the jobs that are there. There's not many. So I mean, if we're talking about feeding families and jobs, we got to get manufacturing to want to be here. We've got to when companies from across the globe want to be in America, they used to want to be in Illinois. We're the best location, the best infrastructure, the best natural resources, and yet they're not coming here now. They're going to Indianapolis, Nashville, all around us, right? So I mean, if we don't start getting serious about having a plan so that businesses, small business and big business, say, okay, Illinois has got their stuff together. I can go there now, because right now they see where we're going. They see the direction of our state, and they don't want to be part of the liabilities. So again, I mean, the plan doesn't have to be a perfect plan. The plan doesn't have to solve the problems tomorrow, in my opinion. Just got to be a plan. And we haven't had that for a long time.
You've got a new speaker in Chris Welch, and a relatively new Senate president in Don Harmon. They're both Democrats. I don't know if you've ever met them or worked with them, but we are no longer in the Madigan world where he's clinging to power and exerting that power over someone like Bruce Rauner or Pat Quinn or Rod Blagojevich. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you can, and this was one of the biggest issues Bruce Rauner had, is it was his way or the highway, whether it was the right to work stuff or the 10-point agenda for whatever he had, and he didn't have the political skills to back up those fights.
Yeah.
Do you envision being a more collaborative worker? Because obviously the House and Senate are still super majority Democrat, and that probably doesn't change in 2022, or at least the majority doesn't change.
Yeah, Patrick. So you're right, and we need to get people running, and the Republican ticket, and these seats that are left open constantly too, I think. But that's beside the point. It's going to be a majority Democrat House and Senate for sure, right? But I shouldn't say for sure, but most likely. So my thing is this. I mean, different from J.B. Pritzker, who, in my opinion, never built anything, right? To Bruce Rauner, who built something, but he built something by buying and selling businesses. I built stuff by on the ground, actually learning how to pour concrete for foundations or for parking lots. I built stuff by actually being involved in the roofing business and on the roofs to understand the roofing business that was going to grow, right? I mean, I'm confident that the people I have to deal with every day, and I've had for the last 40 years, are people that politically think from all different sides of the fence, or my customers who definitely have an agenda of getting the cheapest price sometimes prolonging paying me, right? So I'm confident that my experience in dealing with people, I don't care who you are, when it comes to, your party, your religion, right? Your race, it just doesn't matter to me. I'm always going to look forward to dealing with people to try and figure out where they come from, right? Where, understanding the paradigm of the person I'm dealing with. I met Don Harmon. Seemed like a really nice guy, actually. Not met Chris Walsh, but I'm confident that these guys understand the problems in Illinois, and I believe they're there to serve. I believe they have the hearts to serve. If they don't, if they don't care about the direction, I shouldn't say, I know they care about the direction of Illinois, or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. I'm confident that it's only the lobbyists, the special interests that'll detour people from the right direction for Illinois. And I'm hoping that's they're not as strong as they once were. I'm maybe a little naive, but I believe that when we look at 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Illinois didn't look so bad, and the Madigans of the world could really play the games of these guys. I think right now the people downstate, Democrats and Republicans alike, I'm confident are going to be there for the best interest of Illinoisans and not themselves.
Let's talk politics for a minute, if you don't mind. You're now the third Republican officially in the race. Once most people see this, you'll be officially in, even though we're recording Monday night. You're a Trump guy in the party that is still pro-Trump, even though voters at large may not be, and folks who've been reading our stuff know that I'm a conservative that wasn't a Trump supporter and have been critical of people who kind of sold their souls to him and changed their policy based on whatever he had to say that day. But the reality is that, you can, when the time comes, if you're the nominee, when you've got to try and convince suburban moms who are frustrated with school closures and property taxes and jobs that you're a better option. And you're not a dummy. The Pritzker administration and that campaign is going to hang that around your neck.
Yeah.
How do you balance the super pro Trump primary voter with the suburban moderate mom that you have to win in November?
Yeah. So for me, the Trump administration to me was the best job creation. And again, I keep going back to this because that's all I've been concerned with for a long time, right? They're the best job creation presidency in the history of my lifetime, maybe the history of our country. I mean, there's nobody that brought jobs back to America like that administration did. I admire that. I mean, if I can be that, even if I can be 60% of that per capita in Illinois, we change our state. It's a whole different place, 3-4 years from now. I mean, I admired that. Now, the tone of that administration and the president, I'm not a fan of that. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the way he said things to some people, and he got, he went on the attack really fast very often. I mean, but again, I like that a heck of a lot better than the direction of the country now, or the direction Pritzker is taking our state. I mean, I want somebody that leads. I don't always put my money or my vote on personality. I put it on the results of policy. And I got to tell you, I like most of the policies, not all of them, but I like most of the policies of the last administration. I don't like the policies of Pritzker. I sure don't like the policy of Biden. I mean, this guy is gonna wreck our country if he gets his way, or his puppet masters get their way.
What about the governor's reaction to the COVID pandemic? I mean, that's obviously what he's going to be judged on for the most in this term. We're talking about this a year after the first lockdown, quote unquote, when schools were stopped. The mask mandate didn't go into effect until about May 1st. What would you have done differently, and could it have saved more lives? Do you believe we should have been more concerned about saving lives?
So Patrick, here, number one, I mean, about before Easter last year, I was talking to health scientists across the globe, that some of my friends that were concerned with this issue. We had phone calls with on a weekly basis. And within 3 weeks, they're telling us that kids under 13 years old or before puberty was what they really used, weren't going to be contagious if they got this. And the odds of them dying from this when they got it, was like way less, like 1/20th what the flu would be for a kid. Okay. Then when they looked at 22 years and under, they could be contagious, but the odds of them dying were like 1/10 what the flu was. And you're always going to protect anybody from everything, but we don't tend to shut down our economy and our schools for the flu. But now you go to the age.
But
groups,
85%
right?
of the deaths were 65 and older. I mean, that's
right. So
there are a lot of people, especially those kids in Chicago public schools or Aurora or some of the more multi-generational housing units, where it would not be hard for a kid to come home from school and pass that on to abuelo or abuela, and you've got 2 new deaths and a sick family.
So again, I mean, I think the education on what the best safety could be was critical in my opinion, right? And again, if a kid's under 10, 12 years old, and in fact they couldn't be contagious, well, they're not going to bother their grandparents or whoever they're home with if that's the case, and that's what we've learned, right? I mean, if you look at the deaths of kids that are committing suicide, or the mental health of kids that can't learn from a screen, or the kids that can't even they don't even have a laptop, or if they do, it might be stolen from them. They don't have the atmosphere to be able to learn from at home. So I mean, think of all those kids and how we cheated them out of an education, in my opinion. So my thing is this: why we wouldn't collaborate as a state, not blue states with blue states or red states with red states, but why the blue state that we wouldn't collaborate with other states that have had great success by opening up from the beginning or soon after the original shutdown. Because we look back, we can see the results of death because of COVID are really no better here than many of these states that have been open the whole time, actually worse in many cases. But what we don't measure, unfortunately, very well that I've seen is the deaths from mental health issues, suicides, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex abuse, right? There's a lot more that went on because of the shutdown, because we shut people out. And then when you look at the shutdown to our economy, it was an opportunity for us as a state to get a jump on the other states around us that were going to shut down. I mean, but instead we were the biggest shutdown economy. So instead of getting a jump, we pushed more small businesses out of our state than like any other state in the country. We look at the lost jobs in our city, in our state, in the restaurant business, the bar business, the businesses that we chose, right, to shut down basically. And bottom line is this: I'll tell you, Patrick, I would not have been a guy to shut down, or a leader to shut down our businesses and our jobs. I would definitely investigated everything about how can we be the safest. And my businesses, they're very dangerous businesses, Patrick. And if we're not, our safety is our first core value. If we're not safe and people don't go home safely, and somebody dies in our business, all the money we make in the world isn't worth it. So we take safety very seriously, just like we should with COVID. I mean, we need to protect our elderly, our sick. But to let people die in hospitals with no family next to them is crazy. My wife was in the hospital. Excuse me. My wife died of brain cancer in 2020. About this time last year, she was admitted to the hospital. We had major problems with her, and she was admitted. I couldn't be with her. Okay, I was in the house with her for months before that. Her and I, right? For me not to be next to her while she was maybe close to dying at the time was ridiculous. So I ended up demanding that I get her out of there. I brought a nurse. I'm blessed. Most people can't afford to do this, right? I was able to hire a nurse to come to my house and be in my house. We started hospice at that time. But again, she probably wouldn't have lived much longer if she was left in a hospital with nobody around her. And at that time, it was so strict, it was crazy. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is, she lived an extra 5-6 months after that, and we're blessed that we had her that long. But I never would let her back to a hospital after that, and we had nursing and doctors coming here when we needed them. But I mean, people can't afford that. So I feel sorry for all those people that lost their family members. When you got a spouse, a kid that will take the risk because they love their grandparents, why the heck wouldn't you let them in that hospital? I mean, so these are things that I believe that if you don't live these things, you don't understand the depths of them, in my opinion. And I believe our governor wasn't a person that was going to live any of these things. I guarantee you somebody, I mean, I shouldn't say guarantee, but I believe that somebody, his family was in the hospital, potentially on their deathbed. He wouldn't, he and anybody would have been there. And again, I want to be a governor that leads by example and doesn't put any laws in place that I couldn't live by myself. It's just common sense to me.
And I know I speak for folks who read this and will watch this, that we have serious sympathy for you and your family and what you went through last year. I've read a little bit about it and have heard about your wife and heard wonderful things. So even a year out, our prayers are with your family.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I do need to ask though about masks. Whether it's a mandate or not, this political fight, which it seems silly that it's political, falls along partisan lines. Maybe as you get farther downstate, it's somebody joked at me, nobody south of I-72 has worn a mask the entire time, but especially up on this half of the state, it's a Republican versus Democrat issue.
Yeah.
And the science seems so clear, so simple, that if you're wearing a mask around other people, you're less likely to pass this or contract this. Why is this an issue? And do you disagree with the fervor that many Republicans have had against masks?
Yeah, you know what? I believe that we need to respect each other, and I believe that masks. I mean, I wear masks to respect other people anywhere I go, right? But I mean, if it's an environment where it's my friends and we're at a restaurant and whatever, my friends who I know and I love, right? They're not wearing masks. I'm probably not wearing them anyway. And also, but I mean, when I'm around other people wearing masks, I'm wearing mine. I got a mask with me all the time. And I'm going to wear one to respect anybody else. If I'm around older people, I'm going to wear a mask. If I'm around sick people, I'm going to wear a mask. But if I'm around a bunch of kids, I'm probably not, just because number one, I've had it already, and I've got the antibodies, so I know that I'm pretty safe. And that's just kind of my thing. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, right? Because I think we need to respect each other always, and I think there's science on both sides of that argument. So I want to be in a world where we respect each other and we have rules that apply to everybody, and we respect the rules also.
Are you vaccinated? Do you think people should get the vaccine?
I'm not vaccinated because I had it. I've got the antibodies, and I'm not a big fan at this point. I'm not saying I'm not going to get vaccinated, because I probably will eventually, but at this point I'm not.
Okay. Before we let you go, Gary, I've pushed you on a lot of specific issues, but what's your pitch? I mean, there are people who read our newsletter who will watch this video that range from nerds like me who live this and the casual person who just wants to know what's going on in government. Why you? Why now?
Yeah, my pitch is because I'm the only. I'm guessing I'm the only one in this race that's created as many jobs as I have from the ground up, from small businesses to medium-sized businesses that we've grown. I'm guessing that I'm the only one in the race that has had the experience to understand the depth of problems compared to states across the country. Because I can tell you, the average state, the cost to do business, the cost to live is much lower than Illinois today. And I have a clear picture of that I don't think other people have today. And I believe that when I look at what good governors are doing across the country that I know, and I've been involved on an executive committee for Republican Governors Association, I've got some experience that I can share from great things that other governors have done to bring jobs to their state, bring opportunity to the state, compared to Illinois, where we're chasing opportunity and jobs away. And bottom line, income, right? We're chasing income out of here. We're going to have less money to take on more debt if we continue on the track we're going. So for me, why me? Because bottom line is, I believe that I'm prepared for this job more than most would be. And we're looking at three things really, Patrick. Number one is I really sincerely want to be able to create 50,000 jobs a year per year by 2024. And that's a short period of time, but I think we can do it with some common sense moves. And I look at the next thing I want to crush property taxes down to the average of the country, or right about where Indiana's at. And I believe we're going to create more wealth in Illinois and property values, and we're going to have an economic boom just by taking that one tax and being average, not being free, not being the cheap, the least expensive, just to be average. Because when we're 180, 200% higher than the average, that's cheating our homeowners and robbing them from their nest eggs. So that's the second thing. And thirdly, I really care about the families of Illinois. And if we don't create a safe environment for our families, if we can't, a mother can't walk down the street with her toddlers anytime, day or night, in any city in their state, we're not doing a very good job. And we're not right now. This is the problem. So when we look at security, that's a huge thing of our families. When I look at education of our families, when our teachers care about the kids, and we all care about the kids more than the teachers, we're going to be in a better place. When we can go teachers that aren't very passionate about the job and incentivize great teachers to teach, and by bonuses and paying them better, that'd be a beautiful thing. And lastly, when we look at these communities, and we see that these families are living in homes that their taxes are 10% in some cases of the value. How's that fair to them, right? We've got to be fair to families like we haven't been in the past, in my opinion. So that's my goal. Three things: just families and taxes, as well as job creation.
Right.
And
Gary Rabine, Republican candidate for governor. Gary, thanks so much for the time, and we wish you the best.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. I appreciate your time.